So we've seen how to create a predictive experiment from our training experiment. And that predictive experiment is really the basis of the web service that we're going to publish in order to make our predictive model available for client applications and processes. So let's take a look now at how we take the next step and publish our predictive experiment as a web service. So here's my predictive experiment. We called it Diabetes Predictor, and we made a few changes to the experiment that was generated for us. We changed the schema of the input by using this Enter Data Manually module here. We also changed the results that get passed out as the output from our web service by using this Apply SQL transformation. So we've made a couple of changes to this. We can now go and deploy this as a web service ready for clients to use. And to do that, well, there's a rather obvious button here that says Deploy Web Service. Now, when I hover over that, you can actually see there's a couple of different options here. There are what we call classic web services, and there are new web services. Well, we're actually going to choose new web services. You can publish obviously as either. We're going to choose new, and the main difference is that the more recent web service model is based on Azure resources. So this is going to be published as something that can be managed as an Azure resource. The classic model is still supported, and if you're using the free tier of Azure Machine Learning, that's your only option. You can publish it as a classic web service. In practical terms for clients, there's not much in the way of difference. In terms of managing them, there are a few differences. So we're going to use the new one. And the first thing it's going to do is it's going to deploy this, and it's asking me to give it a web service name. So we named the experiment Diabetes Predictor. We'll have a similar name without a space in for the web service name. Now, the web service is obviously going to be, the files associated with it need to be stored somewhere, so that's going to be stored in our storage account. And when we use the web service, obviously that's going to incur costs. That's what we need our payment plan to play for. So we'll choose our price plan that we want to use to bill the usage of this web service from. And then we'll go ahead and click and deploy that web service. And when the web service has been deployed, we get taken to this web services portal where we can manage our various web services, and it's opened up that Diabetes Predictor web service for me to look at. So this is where I can manage and monitor that. If I actually go back to the top level of this, I can see all of my web services. So I can see all of the web services that I have published here that I can manage. And I can also from here see my classic web services. So if I've got web services that I've published, in my case I might have some that I've published from my free workspace, I can manage those in the same place. So we have this web services portal where I can view my web services. And because this Diabetes Predictor web service was published as a new web service, as an Azure Resource Model web service, if I go back to the Azure portal now, and I'll just refresh all of my resources, I can see that I have that Diabetes Predictor web service. That's a resource that I can manage along with all my other Azure resources in the Azure portal. So I've got that model of deploying a new type web service, which is an Azure resource, and I can manage, do some of the management from that in the Azure portal and manage it along with my classic web services in this web services management portal.